In the news tonight, His Majesty the King accepts the credentials of 6 new ambassadors recently accredited to the kingdom at a ceremony at Basman Palace. A suicide bomb attack at the Syrian Defense Ministry in Damascus kills at least 4 people, and the World Food Programme says it's unable to deliver aid in some areas due to heavy fighting. And the chairman of Egypt's Constituent Assembly hands the new constitution to the interim president and urges Egyptians to vote yes on the document in a referendum expected this month or the next. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Here are the details. His Majesty the King accepted the credentials of 6 ambassadors recently accredited to the kingdom at a ceremony at Basman Palace. The ambassadors to present their credentials were Ambassador of Canada Bruno Sacomani, Ambassador of Norway Cecile Brie, Ambassador of the Czech Republic, Peter Hadek, Non-resident Ambassador of Uzbekistan, Oybek Uzmanov, Non-resident Ambassador of Mongolia, Odonjil Banzarach, and Non-resident Ambassador of Djibouti, Muhammad Ali Mu'min. The ambassadors later laid wreaths at the royal tombs. Tomorrow, King Abdullah begins a work visit to Belgium. The trip is part of His Majesty's coordination with world leaders on regional issues and efforts to boost relations between Jordan and the EU. King Abdullah will meet with King Felipe of Belgium and Prime Minister Elio de Rupo for talks on latest Mideast developments. His Majesty will also hold talks with President of the European Council, Herman Van Rompuy, European Commission President José Manuel Barroso, EU High Representative of Foreign Affairs and Security Policy Chief Catherine Ashton, and President of the European Parliament Martin Schulz, along with members of the Parliament's committees. The King will also meet with a number of European political and intellectual figures to discuss regional developments as well as Jordanian EU ties. It has been almost 10 years since former Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat died in a French hospital, but investigations into his death continues. Today, French forensic tests have concluded that Arafat did not die of poisoning, as has been suggested by an earlier report. The finding, radiation scientists who examined the Swiss and the French reports upon the request of Arafat said both studies found similar levels of polonium-210 in Arafat's body, but differed in their explanations of how it got there. And over to Syria, and a suicide bomb attack at the Syrian Defense Ministry office in central Damascus killed at least 4 people. The bomber detonated himself using an explosive belt at the office in the Jisr al-Abyad area in the capital center. At least 4 people were killed and 17 wounded in the attack. Rami Abdurrahman, director of the Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, said the office was used by relatives of deceased soldiers for paperwork and was not a military site. Meanwhile, the United Nations said it has fallen short again of its monthly target of feeding 4 million people in Syria due to heavy fighting. UNICEF also said the number of vulnerable children in Syria has nearly quadrupled from a year ago to 4.3 million, putting the scale of humanitarian response needed for the winter at unprecedented levels. A UNICEF spokesperson said in addition to the 4.3 million children who need help inside Syria, another 1.2 million living as refugees in neighboring countries also require aid. UN Aid Chief Valerie Amos was to brief the Security Council on the humanitarian situation in Syria tonight. The World Food Programme said it delivered food to 3.4 million people in November, again unable to reach hungry people in contested areas.
To dispatch enough food to feed in excess of 3 million people. To 13 out of the 14 provinces in the country. There's at least one province that we're not able to get to at all because of fighting that stops us using the routes to get there. Of course, there's also many other places villages, towns, small communities that are cut off, but we take every single opportunity to reach them.
Another day of violence in Iraq has left 12 people killed when two separate attacks targeted a government complex and a police building. In the first assault, 9 people were killed and 17 wounded in a suicide and mortar attack on a government compound in the northern town of Thailand. One attacker wearing an explosive belt blew himself up at the structure which held the mayor's office, the town's police station and other government organizations. 4 members of the security services were killed in the second attack on a police administrative building in the northern city of Tikrit when a car bomb exploded near the main gate. Some 19 people were wounded, including civilians. 3 people wearing explosives and military uniforms drove to the gate in SUVs after the car bomb. 2 detonated themselves and 1 was killed by police. A draft of Egypt's new constitution was presented to interim President Adli Mansour today after the Constituent Assembly finalized the document on Sunday. The chairman of the Assembly, Amr Musa, urged Egyptians to vote to accept the new constitution when it is put to a referendum. The referendum will take place this month or the next. Musa told a news conference in Cairo that he was honored to present the document to the president and that talks took place regarding the next steps. The constitution lays a roadmap for political transition in Egypt, and not approving it would lead the country into further uncertainty.
Now it is very important for us as Egyptians to request that all citizens vote yes, to take part in the referendum and vote yes. Egypt is in crisis, a very dangerous state of strife. The point is that it is essential that we put an end to the strife and that we exit this dangerous situation that we are in and get Egypt out of this dangerous situation.
NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen said the agency would have to pull all its troops out of Afghanistan by the end of 2014 if Afghan President Hamid Karzai does not sign a security pact with the United States. The NATO-led force currently has around 80,000 troops in Afghanistan, the majority American. The United States has already warned it could withdraw all its forces by the end of next year, the so-called zero option, if Karzai does not sign the pact. Without the US-Afghan accord, NATO will not be able to finalize its own agreement with the Afghan government, setting the terms for troops from other NATO and partner nations to remain in Afghanistan after 2014.
Pledged to contribute to financing the Afghan security forces. That assistance is put at risk if we can't deploy our own training mission to Afghanistan. And furthermore, the international community has pledged to provide development assistance to Afghanistan. That aid might also be put at risk. So a lot is at stake, and I'm hopeful that the bilateral security agreement between Afghanistan and the United States will be signed and pave the way for a NATO legal framework so that we can deploy a training mission after 2014.
Meanwhile, Pakistani politician Imran Khan reiterated his party's decision to continue the blockade of NATO supplies to Afghanistan until the US stopped deadly drone strikes on a Pakistani troubled region. Khan's PTI party is in power in the northwestern province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, a key supply route for the US-led NATO forces in Afghanistan. For the past 11 days, PTI protesters blocked the crucial Torkum supply route. Speaking to the protesters, Khan said that under no circumstances will they allow NATO supplies to pass, no matter what the consequences. He appealed to all Pakistani people to stand up for their self-respect. NATO transports between 70 to 80% of its supplies via Torkum and Chaman borders. In Thailand, the mood of anti-government protests across the country has softened after the government ordered police to stop confronting protesters who demand the resignation of Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra. 5 people have been killed in clashes since the weekend and scores hurt. A heavy-handed government crackdown would have raised questions about the government's survival and the possibility of the military stepping in to restore order. Here's more on how the streets of Bangkok looked like today.
Daybreak in Bangkok and the Thai capital resembles a war zone. Garbage and plastic water bottles fill the streets after more than a week of anti-government demonstrations. Soon enough, protests pick up again with the same force seen in recent days. Here, a group of demonstrators bring down a concrete barrier in front of the government house where Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawat's offices are located. Later, police announced they're allowing demonstrators onto the grounds around the government house in an effort to ease tensions. The protesters want Yingluck to step down. She's so far refused, but has said she wants an end to the violence and is willing to negotiate. December 5th marks the 86th birthday of Thai King Bhumibol, and as the majority of demonstrators support the monarchy, it's unlikely they'll continue any provocations with police, at least on that day.
Former South African President Nelson Mandela was honored with an official opus that chronicles his life. The book, dedicated to South Africa's anti-apartheid icon, measures half a meter in length and weighs 37 kilograms. Present at the book launch were Mandela's wife, his grandson, other members of the family, and South African officials. Nelson Mandela's eldest daughter said her father's spirit is still strong, even though he is sick. And Opus Media CEO Carl Fowler said the Opus was all about telling great stories in a new way. The Nelson Mandela book is the biggest Opus Media has ever made, and each one is hand-stitched.
That's the simple essence of what we try to do on every project. It's about telling these stories in a way never been told before by using great photography.
The Opus book is about celebrating Tata's life, celebrating its highs and lows as wide as we can, as his children and his progeny. And celebrating these challenges, the rivers that Tata has crossed, the journey that he has taken, the indomitable human spirit that could never be conquered.
With only 22 days for Christmas, the countdown to festivities was kicked off in London's Trafalgar Square with the unveiling of the Christmas tree. The tree is an annual gift from Norway, which has since 1947 been gifting London with a Christmas tree in a mark of gratitude for Britain's support during World War I. The tree, usually a Norwegian spruce, is over 20 meters high and 50 to 60 years old, and is decorated in traditional Norwegian fashion with vertical strings of lights using energy-efficient bulbs. One of Princess Diana's gowns, known as the fairy tale dress, is up for sale at Kerry Taylor Auctions in London today. The dress was designed by the Emanuels in 1986, and more than 25 years on, it is expected to fetch between $80,000 and $130,000. The dress is white organza and satin and has shimmering gold panels, jewel-like rhinestones and pearl adornments. It was a favorite of the late princess, as she had worn it several times in several different ways. Another interesting royal lot at the auction is a pair of hair bellows that was used for powdering the wigs of King George III. As the Brazilian city of Costa do Sauípe prepares to host the World Cup draw, FIFA and the Brazil's World Cup 2014 local organizing committee met to discuss Brazil's readiness for the World Cup. Brazil is under intense pressure to meet the December deadline FIFA set for the stadiums to be ready. Asian Football Confederation FC President Sheikh Salman bin Ibrahim Al Khalifa said that Brazil had done a great job so far in organizing the tournament and that they were candidates to win it too. 32 qualifying teams are to find out which group they belong to and who they will be playing in their 3 group stage matches. The draw will also dictate where teams will be based in Brazil. And in Rome, Italy's soccer coach said that he would ask FIFA to authorize 2 minutes of stop time during each half of every match in order for players to drink water during the World Cup Championship in Brazil. Speaking at a news conference, Cesare Prandelli said the danger of players becoming dehydrated was extremely serious and that adequate time must be allowed in order for teams to make sure their players could drink enough water. Current regulations say that water can only be made available at water stations near the goals and only if a corner is being played. Prandelli said Italy would officially make the request in 2 days' time. And finally, unstable weather conditions affect the kingdom tonight with a chance for thundery showers in the northern and eastern regions. Winds will be southwesterly moderate to brisk, blowing dust in the desert areas. Similar weather prevails tomorrow as the kingdom continues to be under the effect of the unstable conditions. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect fair conditions with a chance for rain, while winds will be northerly moderate to brisk and the seas slightly choppy. The weatherman warns of poor visibility in the Badia due to dust. Here now is a look at temperatures forecast for tonight and tomorrow. And to close, here's a reminder of the day's top stories. His Majesty the King accepts the credentials of 6 new ambassadors recently accredited to the kingdom at the ceremony at Basman Palace. A suicide bomb attack at the Syrian Defense Ministry in Damascus kills at least 4 people, and the World Food Programme says it's unable to deliver aid in some areas due to heavy fighting. And the chairman of Egypt's Constituent Assembly hands the new constitution to the interim president and urges Egyptians to vote yes on the document in a referendum expected this month or the next. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Ali Tuqan. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.